Hello, welcome everyone to the Q&A for Shamanic Travels Beyond the Veil for Remote Healing and Self-Evolution. Take magical flight through the three souls to shape-shift your reality and our world. I'm Ann Patricia with the Shift Network, and it is my sincere honor and pleasure to be your host as we explore the teachings of Don Oscar Miro-Quesada Solevo and address questions about his course, which begins on Wednesday, June the 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific. Now, if for any reason you're unable to join us live for this course, you can still participate. I'll be explaining more about that later. But first, I want to introduce my guest. Don Oscar Miro-Quesada Solevo, one of our esteemed faculty here at the Shift Network, is a respected Camasca curandero from Peru, founder of the Heart of the Healer, originator of Pachacute Mesa tradition cross-cultural shamanism, fellow in ethnopsychology. Don Oscar is a seasoned navigator of non-ordinary states of consciousness, guiding people from all walks of life to access realms of being through which multidimensional powers and forces are available for healing self, others, and our planetary ecosystem as a whole. Such a greatly needed service in our world these days. So I want to have you join me in welcoming Don Oscar to our session today. Welcome, Don Oscar. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Anne, for that very honorable introduction. You did great justice to the very difficult words in Quechua and in Spanish. I appreciate that. And for that, I offer you some cleansing smudge. And that goes for everybody who is joining us on this very important gathering, exploring the unlimited possibilities of our human three souls, known as the Quinza Texedunanting in Quechua. These three bodies in which we are able to travel beyond the veil are an indispensable tool for the spiritualization of humankind, as well as for our own befriending of our soul nature as the primacy of consciousness. So thank you, Anne, for opening up this space for me to host and journey together with those who are here interested in partaking of this plunge into the multidimensionality of universal shaman reality.
Don Oscar, I would love it if you could lead us in an opening practice this morning.
Most definitely. Thank you for opening up that space. So I'd like us all to go ahead and take a couple of deep breaths and open our bodies. Do not cross your legs if your legs are crossed. Make sure that both of your feet are planted on the ground. Allow your palms to be open to the heavens. They can rest on your thighs or knees. And let us allow this opening practice to deepen our acceptance, our affirmation that we are immortal in being, beyond form, fearlessly free to be all worlds, times, and places that summon me. Open your heart to your unlimited experience as pure, unadulterated consciousness, as awareness that is boundless, without limit, able to dream yourself into a world or worlds that sustain the beauty and love that is your true nature, your essence as a soul. Bringing awareness to your breath. Allow your tongue to gently remain in touch with your upper palate, your jaw, your mandible, your mouth ever so slightly open, loose, relaxed. tongue against upper palate. Awareness on breath. Shoulders relaxed, loose. Letting go. Softening. Very good. Now gently exhale all the air from your lungs and hold on the exhalation. Now gently and slowly inhale through the nose, filling your lungs to capacity. Retain, hold. And gently exhale through the nose. Let us do that in unison 2 more times, inhaling, retaining, and exhaling. Excellent. We have thus completed 3 perfect breaths, 3 perfect triangles, balancing our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies. All expressions of our soul body, of our unified consciousness, of self and cosmos united, allowing that intrinsic wholeness that is our birthright to be the guiding purpose of our lives, making whole whatever is fragmented, uniting whatever is separate. Holding in loving heart all suffering, all dissonance, all pain, all lack, and all fear through the compassion that is our true shamanic medicine. In this relaxed state of open acceptance of this innate power that through our simple presence, united in a field of love, beneficent planetary transformation issues forth from our hearts, our dreams, our words, and our actions. Remember this. Experience it. Be it. Santa Vibre Spiritista llama nombre del Señor Celestial. Todo daño llévale a su dueño, llévale. Very good. On the count of 3, gently, slowly open your eyes, feeling refreshed, energized, in perfect peace and harmony, able to receive our interaction as aspirants of the great work, as a stepping stone toward planetary spiritualization. Thank you for your service. 1, you're aware of your breath, your physical vehicle, your body. Cleansed, purified, strong, alive, vital. 2, you're aware of the physical location, the room you're in, the people you may be with, the home or environment that you find yourself in. 3, very gently, very slowly, open your eyes, coming back, back, back. Reiki.
Thank you so much, Don Oscar. So we'll spend the rest of our time together exploring your questions for Don Oscar as we prepare for his video course, Shamanic Travels Beyond the Veil for Remote Healing and Self-Evolution. The course begins on Wednesday, June the 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific. Please visit our website, shamanicmagicalflight.com, to learn more about this 9-module course, and you'll also find a link to register as well. So let's get started with your questions. First, I want to thank everyone who sent in questions ahead of time through our webcast. And for those of you joining us live, please type your question into the chat, and I'll be happy to read them out. So we're going to start with a question sent in through our webcast from Lori. I am a shamanic and Reiki practitioner. I do absentee distance healing and journey to alternate realities. Would you say this is a beginner's course or designed for those already practicing shamanism with experience in meditation, journey healing background?
Dearest Lori, it is what you make it. If you would like to use the tools that will be presented to advance your already seemingly masterful use of Reiki, they serve as an enhancer. We must understand that there's many forms of externalizing our consciousness from the constraints of our physical existence. In the form, even in our waking state, in the simple daydreaming moments of our life, in which we kind of space out, are forms of externalizing our consciousness. They're very natural. So is our dream state, and so are the induced or willed out-of-body experiences. That is the best term we have right now in the modern Western world to describe what happens during these 3 types of soul journeys that I will be covering during this course. So understand that it's all about living our medicine. We understand in the Andes that when our daydream, our waking dream, and our sleeping dream all have similar elements, meaning that maybe you dream something in your sleeping dream and then the next day or two you encounter it, almost like a déjà vu, but in physical form on the street. That means that you're in the groove, you're in the zone in which your service is going to be healing for the world, for another person. And it's an indication that it's the time for you to use your skills as, let's say, a Reiki healer and absentee healer, and up them and bring them into the world in a much larger manner. So I would say that it depends on how you want to position your experience with this apprenticeship, whether it is just an introductory or a neophyte initiation, or an actual catapult to very superior and refined and highly masterful expressions of what is already in you as a shamanic aspirant of the great work. I trust that this answers your question, Lori.
Alex is asking, I'm wondering how magical flight is different from journeying.
Well, magical flight and journeying are similar at the beginning stages. Viaje con sombra, I've loosely defined as magical flight or journey work because it's the closest approximation we have to that experience as understood by the Camasca tradition of shamanic arts in Peru. The main difference is that after a while, when you engage in this viaje con sombra, you are able to experience yourself standing outside of your physical body, much like the phenomena of heutoscopy when people have near-death experiences or spontaneous out-of-body experiences where they witness themselves floating above their bodies and they can observe their bodies sitting or lying down below. So in Viaje con Sombra, we learn to externalize the yantu, or the cuerpo sombra, the shadow body, which is another term for our causal or mental body. And we see ourselves, and we exit through the brow, and we see ourselves standing in front of the physical vehicle that is there peacefully sitting. And therefore, that is the main difference, because from that point, then you can walk out into the world and even project yourself through magical flight, just like a winged one, to a distant location to affect the types of healing needs that there may be in a person or a community or a family. So the main difference would be that experience of externalized being separate from the body. While in shamanic journey, usually what happens is that you go within and you enter into a realm that is a visionary realm, but there's still a certain awareness that it is you in your body that is experiencing that phenomena. I trust that that clarifies your question, Alex. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Don Oscar. This is somewhat related. I heard you mention that everyone has experienced flying, but I don't know that I have. Can I learn?
You are already in flight, dear one. Just think about it. You exist on a planet that is spinning, I don't know how many revolutions around its axis incessantly, and on top of that is inclined with Ursa Minoris, with the North Star toward the galactic center, and in its equinoctial precession is rotating every 26,000 years around the galactic center, and on top of that, it's spinning on its axis and rotating or orbiting the sun. We're already in flight. The illusion of not being in flight is basically just our neural pathways, our brain makeup, that for survival reasons, because it would be a bit disconcerting to understand that we are suspended in space on a ball that is hurtling through the universe at all times. But for our survival as a human species, our brain has learned to adapt and create a type of three-dimensional projection that makes it seem like we are on stable ground. That's a long-winded way of saying, if you can understand the miracle of what it is to be a human being on this body, on this earth, that is in constant movement, in constant transformation, constant change, then accepting that you can transcend what is static, what seems permanent or unmovable, is just a matter of will. So, remember, all of these skills that I will be covering are innate, natural, metanormal human abilities that unfortunately we do not learn to develop in the modern or postmodern westernized educational system. Yet they are an indispensable part of our indigenous psyche. They are core means of communing with a much more vast and sentient multiverse. So your attitude is everything, dear one. Fly. Accept that you can fly, and you shall.
Thank you for that, Don Oscar. Wilson says, hello and many thanks. Would you discuss briefly how we can strengthen our intent to soul voyage?
When you believe it, you shall see it. Once again, I cannot overemphasize the importance of encountering or moving into this type of practice, knowing that we are all endowed with the ability to imagine ourselves as much more than what we are, much more than through our rational or intellectual capacity. And by being in a place of deep, relaxed receptivity, and also of open trust that your birthright is, Wilson, is to be a being that can move beyond the three-dimensional material plane with a willed purpose to do good in the multiverse or in the universe. Just that attitude will strengthen your ability to go ahead and do this type of work. Other than that, I would suggest also every night before you go to sleep to hold on to your thumb like this. Lay down prior to going into your dream time and bring into consciousness in as much detail as possible the dream that you want to go into. And fall asleep holding your thumb like this. When you fall asleep, your hand's going to drop. And at that point, there's a very large possibility that you will trigger finding yourself in this dream, much like a lucid dream, aware that you are dreaming. It takes some practice, yet it is really a very natural experience for all humans to do. So that's one of the many techniques I'll be covering in the class that will be stepping stones toward being able to just sit there, relax yourself in the proper way, use certain vibrational frequencies based on sacred sounds that are derived from the Kamaska Curandero tradition to amplify one's own energy body and to will yourself, not only as a projection of the three different souls that we'll be working with, but as your consciousness itself focused on a particular expression, focused on a particular necessity to shapeshift into light, basically. I hope that this stimulates you to join us and learn how to travel beyond the veil.
Thanks, Don Oscar. This question relates from Amy. I see you have mentioned different vowel sounds in the descriptions. Are these specific to Peru or are they universal?
Excellent question. Thank you, Amy. U, A, E. The three Latin vowels are bija sounds. They're seed sounds. They're found in many, many traditions and mystery schools and hermetic practices that involve sacred sound to activate or dislodge one's consciousness from the entrapment of materiality. Yet they are the core. They are the core material. You just spoke that. I just spoke that, and this burst of smoke from my incense just came flooding, just like the yantu, the cuerpo sobra would rise out of the body. Boof. So by using those sounds, we can release our consciousness. And they are derived from the original dialect of the Chavin culture, which is the mating ground of all curanderismo in Peru, all folk healing. And they are the Chavin language, most of it has been forgotten, but there are certain terms that contain those three vowels that are still used by camasqueros, by huachumeros, by practitioners of contemporary Peruvian healing arts that involve that, as well as their tarjos, their medicine songs. So I've been able to synthesize those three vowels in a manner that by toning them, they elicit or educe, are able to call forth out from the constraints of the body the three forms of soul that we understand are available in the Andean mystical tradition to be able to journey, to do remote healing, and be used for self-evolution as a sadhana, as a practice. So a parallel would be just the bija sound used in Sanskrit for the Anahata chakra is ah, right? If you just use that, you're going to have the same experience eventually of leaving the Hatun Sonko, the universal heart, as the ensueño does, as the dream travel does, by toning ah repeatedly until you feel this field of opening and this portal or gateway in your heart, in your universal heart, expanding. And through that, any consciousness that is still embedded in the cellular memory can be released and sent on its way to journey where you intend it to go. So yes, these sounds are specific to the Chavin culture, yet are ubiquitous in any psychospiritual practice worldwide from time immemorial to the present. Just Google it.
Molly says, do the three souls we all have correspond to anything known of in other cultures?
Oh, yes, Molly. Oh, yes. Every culture has a different cosmology, a different model of the universe, and an understanding of how human awareness or consciousness mirrors that model. It's a reflection of that reality, right? So I found in my own studies of Hermetic traditions and mystery schools worldwide, all the way from the Sumerian and Assyrian and Babylonian, Egyptian, Vedic, Taoist, multiple, and of course Native American, mostly South American, but some North American, even Dreamtime work of the dreaming realm of the Aboriginal peoples of Australia. They all of their cosmologies involve these multiple souls that we have. The Egyptian civilization is one of the classic examples, with their Ka, the Ba, and their Shu. Now, but there really are more expressions or variations within this continuum of consciousness in which souls are available for different types of travel. They're ubiquitous and they're ever present because all human beings share the same soul, just like we share the same color of blood. We have the same consciousness. And therefore, any tradition of the past, any spiritual practice that is founded upon that tradition will be tapping into these very primordial originating roots and will be deriving from them that certain modes or techniques that serve to help one's spiritual evolution and, most important, one's progression as a soul. When we do this training, though, I'm going to ask you to suspend your understanding of any other associations. In our first class, I will cover many of those historical as well as cultural similarities between what we'll be learning from the Peruvian mystical Andean tradition applied to soul travel. Yet you will have a nice overview of the different types of the different civilizations and cultures around the world, shamanic and more advanced, that engage in the use of these three souls as a means of externalizing our human consciousness. I trust that answers your question, dear one.
Thank you, Don Oscar. Vergi says, is this course beneficial to someone who is not able to see and have vista?
Are you talking about congenital blindness or just not yet having broken through with your imagination? Because there's two, that's very different. If you, Sergi, okay, if you haven't been able to break through and have images, it took me 2 years when I was apprentice with Don Celso Rojas. Even when I was involved in the very reverent and sacramental use of the San Pedro plant spirit medicine in our mesadas, 2 years, all I would see was black. Everybody was journeying, having these technicolor encounters with beings from multiple dimensions, and I was just stuck in my own blackness. There came a time when I said, well, this is who I am, and I'm okay with it. I'm enough as I am. I'm still able to sweep the floors and wash the dishes and help Don Celso out in the sugarcane, and I'm still being trusted as his left hand and right hand person during a mesada. And I am honored by that. The minute I came to that realization that I was okay the way I was, boom, the breakthrough happened. And I started to develop vista. And from then on, I refined the vista. And without the need to imbibe any type of ceremonial plant relative to initiate that type of visionary experience. So I ask you to approach this type of work beyond understanding that it has to do with vista. This has to do with none of the 5 sensory apperceptions we have, sight, smell, hearing, sense, and taste, none of those are engaged when we're working with this. You can go ahead, when you're out in your soul body, the pleasures of the body really aren't appealing. And so therefore, they're not necessary to generate an experience of reality, of this being something that I can trust. On the contrary, when you're liberated from those pleasure or pain polarities that make up our dual experience as human beings on planet, you're able to truly see, not just have vista. And by see, you become. It's much like when the stories of those people have near-death experiences and they go through their life review. It's not that they see everything that they've done pass in front of them, but the most important things is how they feel. They'll feel the other person's pain when they had betrayed them. They'll feel any type of transgression or violation that they may have, that their actions in their living life may have had on another. So they will empathize and feel what their unconscious actions produced in another. That's their life review. And in similar fashion, we see through our feeling, we see through our sentience, through our awareness. That's the best way I can explain this. So do not worry. Just take the plunge into the rabbit hole.
So we're here with Don Oscar learning about his course, Shamanic Travels Beyond the Veil for Remote Healing and Self-Evolution, which begins on Wednesday, June the 3rd. Please log on to shamanicmagicalflight.com for all the details and to register. So Lisa is sharing, during my first ceremony in Guatemala, I saw with clarity how imagination is real, a conduit to soul and beyond. Can you speak of the role of imagination?
Imago, the imaginal realm. Oh, my favorite hangout place. Imagination is a prerequisite to all creation. Whether it is birthing a baby, because you imagined that before you birthed the baby, hopefully, you have an idea that that could happen. It's in your image. And the most incredible masterpieces of architecture, temples, art, painting, drawing, sculpting, music, all begin with the imagination. We consider in the Andes, and as you shall learn in this class, or course, or apprenticeship, better said, that imagination is our primordial intuition. It existed before we even took on flesh as self-reflective beings, humans, two-legged. And it goes hand in hand with the gift of free will, or libre albedrío, in which we are in charge of how we live our life. And the way we apply that free will, for ill or for good, will determine the fate of our soul's evolution. So, to imagine clearly, to have disciplined, focused, imaginative capacity is key to walking in beauty on planet. And it is instrumental in cultivating, refining, and transcending even the ability to externalize ourselves, our soul, from the physical realm. The reason being is once we transcend our human consciousness, hopefully, as bodhisattvas, are given the chance to return to Earth to serve, we are reliant on our imagination, on that seventh level of consciousness, to determine what life we are going to have when coming back on Earth. This is the way we understand it in the Andes, although we do not call those enlightened beings that have been able to reach paranirvanic consciousness or moksha or samadhi bodhisattvas. We call them simply the Wilkas, the sacred ones. So use your sacred imagination, good sister. It is your most important tool in the evolution of self beyond soul into light. Thank you for your question.
So a little practical question here from Scott and others. Can you speak about the altar space, or Mesa, we will create? I have very limited space, Scott says. How would I go about setting up a Mesa?
Do you have this amount of space? If you have that amount of space, you can set up a Mesa. All you need are the 5 directional pieces and 2 additional northwest and southeast pieces. You will learn how to assemble, no matter how small it is, an altar ground that serves as a portal, as an interdimensional bridge between the 3 worlds of the interior world, the Uhupacha, commonly sometimes mistakenly called the lower world. It has nothing lower to it. It's interior. The Kaipacha, which is this waking consciousness, this middle world, and the Hanakpacha, the superior or celestial or upper world. That Mesa will serve as your trio, your center pole, as the connector between all vertical dimensions. It is the place where you, as a psychopomp, as a traveler between worlds, can enter and exit at will. You are the Mesa is a physical mirror of you, of what's going on inside of you, of how you are also the mirror of cosmos. And there are particular movements, placements, ritual gestures, sounds, and visionary tools that are associated with the Mesa practice that are very simple to master. If you go to the course homepage, you'll see that there is a video that is offered as part of this that you must watch. And it'll just, guide you through the processes of setting up your own altar ground. We recommend the smallest size of a manta or a ground cloth that you can put on it, or if you need to put it on a table, that's fine also, to be 2 feet by 2 feet. If you can handle that, my good friend, you're golden. Yet, fear not. The Mesa construction is a very user-friendly ally to your soul's evolution. Thank you for your question.
So we have time for a few more questions, and I really appreciate all the wonderful questions that are coming in. But before we take those, I want to share a few details about Shamanic Travels Beyond the Veil for Remote Healing and Self-Evolution. This is going to be a transformative 9 weeks with Don Oscar, where you'll transform and heal. And the 9-module course takes place on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, starting June the 3rd. You'll receive audio and video replays, transcripts, and all other materials through your course homepage, and yes, support for building your Mesa. Also, I'd like to remind you that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks. For this course, it's until June the 17th to make sure you absolutely love it and it's a fit for you. And as an added option, all participants are welcome and encouraged to connect to a private Facebook community group to stay connected with one another. Now, everyone who registers receives the Travels Beyond the Veil bonus collection. This is a rich package, including Shamanism as Living Art, a video conversation with Don Oscar and Evelyn Reisdyke. The Shaman's Flight and Heaven's Light, audio with Don Oscar and Dr. Raymond Moody. Extending Our Field of Consecration from Mesa to Pachamama. This is an audio from Don Oscar. Summon to Remember. This is a slideshow of Don Oscar's 2019 return sojourn of shamanic communion with Peru's mythic past. And the Pachacuti Masa Tradition Basics Toolkit. This is a set of resources from Don Oscar that will support you in building your Mesa. And when you register by midnight Pacific, Thursday, May the 28th, you'll receive this special bonus, A Death Worth Living, a video conversation with Don Oscar and Hank Wesselman. Imagine this: with every breath you take, the end of what once was and the beginning of what is to be. Don Oscar and Hank Wesselman share their own intimate shamanic trials and tribulations associated with a death worth living. All right, over to some more questions. The guided journey you led was very helpful to me. I've done it 3 days in a row now, and I always get something very profound. Thank you. Is it recommended to repeat the journey, and if so, how often do you recommend we repeat a journey such as this one?
Use the journey as long as it nurtures your life, as long as it brings peaceful presence to who you are in the world, as long as it expands your vision of what you can become in this world and beyond, and as long as you still enjoy my voice. Use it as medicine, as your heart desires.
Cameron asks, can we use this technique to help other souls find peace and transition to the next realm?
With practice, with purity of motive, clarity of intention, and clear guidelines regarding the types of medicines are proper for the person that seeks your intervention as a soul body at a remote location. Depending on these variables, the impact could be profound in terms of transforming the suffering of another into relief and into even spiritual growth. We don't have time during this question and answer session to tell you some anecdotes of my own and other people's that are beyond imagining, yet we are magical beings. We are mystically endowed, and we are majestic medicine embodiments. And we just need to own up to it and learn to, together. You don't have to do this isolated. Know that there are multiple souls, ancestral, future, and present, that are all supporting and giving you some major sustenance during your journeys, during your travels beyond the veil. Yes, it is a very powerful way of affecting change, as long as the person doing the medicine work does not take credit for it. I have found that one's efficacy as a shamanic healer, whether in physical, three-dimensional ritual sense, or in dreaming time, or in soul travel time, that one's efficacy as a healer is directly proportional to one's freedom from self, to the ability to step out of the way, and most importantly, always attribute the healing to the person who received it, to their own innate ability to have galvanized their dormant resources to effect that change in them. And in that way, you are guaranteed a sustained and long-term impact of your healing efforts. So yes, thank you for your question.
Here's one from Katie, Don Oscar. I am a Usui Karuna Reiki practitioner and was on your Journey Beyond the Veil webinar last Tuesday. I felt like I had been attuned and was hoping you could clarify exactly what you shared with us. Was it just an ignition or an attunement to shamanism? I know my Reiki became more powerful afterward. When meditating, I was getting answers to questions I had from long ago and big revelations to my past and future.
Thank you so much for that question. It's a catalyst. Any medicine transmission that I am used as a hollow bone through which to transmit or through which to impart to others comes from a place of pure love, pure, unadulterated, compassive feeling known as munai in Quechua. And therefore, when I step out of the way, that's what you're receiving. And true, unadulterated love, all caps, is the ultimate medicine. It's what is behind creation's dreaming. So therefore, you received, much like a Shaktipa, much like an awakening of a dormant spiritual energy in you, that Muktananda or others are famed for doing. Not that I'm attributing myself to any one of those great masters. Yet the intention of what I do when I facilitate these journeys is exactly the same. And I strive to transmit it through this cyberspace, through this multidimensional field of interactivity that we have in this technologically savvy field of communication. So yes, you and many, many others become, it's a wake-up call. And it's an activation of other potentials that you always had, but had not yet been given permission from an outside source to use. So thank you for acknowledging that, and may you continue blossoming and flourishing in your beauty service work, my good sister.
Don Oscar, there are several questions related to protection and whether that's needed in doing the journeys that they'll be doing in the course.
That's a common concern with most traditional OB or out-of-body or soul travel journeys that have been purported since the late 1800s to the present. The only difference is that when they are tested in controlled laboratory settings, in parapsychological institutes and the like, that concern is never there. And I want to highlight that. In the past, there was a fear, an inherent fear that was based on the great influence that the church, the Christian church, the Catholic Church, had throughout the Western world, that if you engaged in these types of activities, that you were, flirting with the devil, with the adversary. And my own experience is that there's more chance of you having soul loss from a deep fright, from a susto, than there would be from you traveling out of your body consciously, or at least being the one who wills that experience. You'll not get lost in the ethers, trust me. And some people do require, based on their own, ancestral cultural conditioning, that connection between the physical body and the soul body through that silver cord that is, famed in many of these types of accounts. Whether you hear about them through Robert Monroe or Bullman or many of the other contemporary pioneers of this type of work. Yet I have not found it in my own experience within a shamanic context, which is very different. We're doing this within a shamanic context, and shamanism is all about caring for another. It's all about offering medicine. So I've never found it to be something that one needs to be concerned about, or when they return from that type of journey, they've been fragmented, disassociated in any way. In the case of people that have already predisposed psychic disassociation, some psychological trauma and problems, of course, I would not suggest they do that. Like I would not suggest that they watch any, emotionally arousing film that could influence them in a negative way. So in that case, if you're hypersensitive to reality, as we understand it, as consensual reality, it's best you don't play around with these things because it could trigger a disassociation. Yet other than that, it's perfectly safe in my experience.
Thanks, Don Oscar. Al is asking, can the same level of healing be achieved remotely versus in person? And similarly, can the same level of healing be achieved when a shaman journeys for someone else versus guiding them to journey for themselves?
Yes, and yes. I believe, or I feel, that you have answered that question yourself. Ultimately, in a nutshell, there's no difference between this, what we're experiencing here in the Kaipacha, this middle realm, and whatever parallel world we would be accessing through these three soul travel techniques. Those parallel worlds have elements of this world in them. They are also governed by very similar, unless you move into the very, very elevated Empyrean dimensions of human consciousness, where the rules that in the macrocosmic and microcosmic rules of engagement between soul and reality don't apply, you're going to have a very similar environment in which to act, to be an agent of change. So yes, the impact you can have in a person to person here and now emotional service to their health is going to be just as effective in a shamanic journey. As a matter of fact, depending on the receptivity of the healee, of the recipient of your work, I have found that it takes hold even better when you do it in an absentee level rather than person to person. Because there's always, in that person to person, there's always that possible transference and trigger that you remind them of some primary caretaker that they didn't like, and therefore there may be some blockage or resistance to truly receiving what you have to offer. When you do it at an absentee level, that's very unlikely. I trust this answers your question, good sister.
Thank you so much, Don Oscar. So I would love to know what you are most called to share at this moment as we begin to wrap up this wonderful hour with you.
Well, I have an extraordinary surprise. I've been a friend of Byron Metcalf's, who worked at the Monroe Institute and developed these extraordinary soundtracks, hemisync soundtracks that harmonize our brain frequencies in a manner that induces visionary experiences, specifically out-of-body travel. He's also, was deeply immersed in Stan Grof's holotropic breathwork. So he's a musician that specializes in music that induces non-ordinary states of awareness, shamanic travel states. And he's a good friend, and we put together a little program when I was visiting him in Arizona a few years back. But he's agreed to come on the show as a surprise guest. And not only that, we are selecting 3 specific soundtracks that will be the background music for the 3 specific journeys, Viaje con Sombra and Sueño en Desdoblamiento, that I'll be facilitating during this. Yet in Module 4, Byron will be joining me, and we're going to be sharing our own experiences with using sound to induce or elicit, or better said, educe, to, tempt out of their hidden domains these unlimited human capacities. And he will be joining us live on screen. So I'm very, very excited about that. He's a wonderful human being with a great depth of knowledge that I'm sure you're all going to benefit from. That's what I would like to share. And the other thing is that the community of practitioners we have, that's the medicine. The field that we have. I mean, I am so indebted to everybody who has taken whatever course online or the in-person courses that have been part of this growing Akashic and 3-dimensional amniotic universe, if I could say so, because it's a womb in which the universal shaman is being gestated, born, and in a sense fulfilling the ancient prophecies of my original peoples, the Taripaipacha prophecy, in which people from all walks of life, skin color, ideological persuasion, cultural background, religious inclination, or whatever, are being called together to break bread together at the table of the Pachayachachik, the world teacher that is none other than yourself. So that I'm very excited about. And that can only be done with community, common unity. So thank you for all showing up. I look forward to welcoming you to Travels Beyond the Veil for remote healing and self-evolution.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Shamanic Travels Beyond the Veil for remote healing and self-evolution. Take magical flight through the three souls to shapeshift your reality and our world begins Wednesday, June the 3rd. Again, please go over to shamanicmagicalflight.com to learn more. You'll register there. You can check out all the wonderful bonuses and details. And if you do so by midnight, May the 28th, you will receive a special bonus that Don Oscar mentioned. And I mentioned a video conversation with Hank Wesselman called A Death Worth Living. Don Oscar, I'm going to hand it over to you for your final farewell before we close.
Well, hope you are all hearing properly, because there are multiple beings that are floating into our space. So this is what we call Abre Camino. It's a aromatic libation that we use in the northern coast of Peru to open up the pathway, to open up one's earth walk in a manner that blesses and brings great fulfillment to your dreams as a human being on planet. So I ask you to receive this libation and this chaya, in this aspersion, into your hearts, into your minds, and into your bodies. So when I asperse, just scoop it up, and just like you would do smudging, just anoint yourself. Con este abrecamino, agüita aromática verdecita que levanta los espíritus y abre todos esos caminos del Capacñán en unión con ese gran Pachayachachi que es ellos mismos. Ofrezco esta chaita con mi furu de kuntur en la vida de ellos presentes. May you receive it with much love.
Thank you again, Don Oscar, and thank you everyone for joining us today. On behalf of all of us here at the Shift Network, we wish you well, and we look forward to having you on this course or on one in the future. Be well.